Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. And now we're going to move to the sweaty dumpling, Mr. Ken Kratz. Also want to give a big shout out to somebody who was helping me research on this video as well, who is absolute titan when it comes to researching this case, by the way, and others. She's phenomenal, and she likes to stick up for the people that can't help themselves or are not equipped to help themselves, which is another thing I like about her. She goes by the name of Tina Stewart. She's absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, a titan. So now we're going to talk about Mr. Kenny Kratz here. So this guy's given me so much information, but when I wanted to put together this video of all, or at least some of the major misrepresentations, I had to kind of go back and look at some of his things too, because they're big. They're huge. Let's talk about the sweat. Okay. The very first thing that Ken Kratz ever misrepresented, as soon as the documentary came out, he said they found Stephen's sweat DNA on the hood latch. Okay. Those of us who were researching quickly found out that that was a bunch of crap. There's no such thing as sweat DNA, but that there can be skin cells in sweat, and that can yield DNA. Now, here's the thing. It is my opinion that Ken Kratz misrepresented the sweat DNA for a reason. He said you have to believe that officers were carrying around little vials of sweat and planting it, so that he's making it seem like they would have needed large amounts of sweat or liquid sweat to be able to plant. But the sweat itself really isn't the thing that has the DNA. It's skin cells, and sweat is something that can loosen them up, but you still got to kind of rub at it to get some, at least a significant amount. What the officers would have really needed to be carrying around would be swabs of sweat, or, sweaty areas of skin, because then it would catch up a lot of, epithelial cells, skin cells that are breaking off, and that's why they use swabs, because it gets more of them and ensures that they'll get a good reading of DNA on it. So to be more plausible, it would have really needed to be swabs, but he wanted to say sweat. And the reason why is he wanted to say sweat because, number one, it makes it seem more ridiculous that the planting happened when you have to think of vials of sweat being carried around. But number two, he didn't want to say swab because he knew swabs had been collected from Stephen, that there had been evidential swabs collected of his DNA. Which brings us to the problem of the hood latch experiment that I was talking about with Lee Egan earlier. The hood latch experiment is significant in the fact that there's way too much DNA left by Stephen. I mean, the whole point of that experiment that she did was to prove the fact that with 15 different people going up and opening that hood latch, that only 4 out of the 15 even left measurable amounts, first off. Only 4 out of the 15 left measurable amounts. The amounts were less than 1/10 of a nanogram. Okay? That's significant. And the reason why that's significant is because that means even all 4 people added up together don't even get anywhere near close to the amount that Stephen Avery left, which was 1.9 nanograms. That is literally just short of 2 full nanograms, when the other people, the 4 people that actually left measurable DNA, left less than 1/10 of a nanogram of DNA. That's the huge significance of that. So that's why Kratz didn't want to talk about swabs. Talking about sweat DNA and vials kept everybody's attention away from thinking about swabs. And as we now can kind of logically surmise, the real way that explains how Stephen Avery could have gotten 1.9 nanograms on that hood latch is because the actual swab of the hood latch was most likely relabeled with one of the buccal swabs that were taken from Stephen, because they were transported to the crime lab together. So it's the it's the theory that makes the most sense of what happened there, because it's just a ridiculous amount of DNA that they found to be left from the fingers opening that hood latch, and the experiment shows that. It's, you know, people can question it, but still, you got to look at the numbers there and go, yeah, there's definitely something to that. Okay, and then you got the press conference. Sweating down the hall, sweated and sweat, you know, that whole thing about the raping and torturing and murdering and cutting and stabbing, and not a trace of it anywhere. So, and it's all taken from Brendan Dassey's confession, which has been ruled now over, his conviction overturned, the confession thrown out now twice by federal courts. It's now going around for the third time, and I can only hope that what I've always heard and what I've tend to seen from the court system, that courts are loath to overturn previous decisions. I really hope that's the case here, because, you know, Brendan's had a long road, and that confession is complete crap. So that's the other thing about Ken, misrepresenting that with the media like that before trial on a uncorroborated confession. Okay, so that's all my issues with, you know, sweatier things with Ken Kratz. So now we're going to move into something else. Back when the blood vial was an issue, and obviously now it's been pretty much ruled out as the source of Stephen's blood, which is fine. But back when it was, you know, the state was still at least somewhat worried about it, back when, right before trial. In fact, the documents I'll be showing you are from December 6th of 2006. And what they're going to show you is Ken Kratz is in court basically telling Judge Willis that we didn't even know about this blood vial. We have no idea what it is. The defense, he tries to claim the defense has known about it for since July. And he makes all these claims, and he's basically playing for pity, like we didn't know about this. We didn't know. Well, he did know about that blood vial. He had actually sent somebody to go check it out and thoroughly examine it, basically. And he was lying. This is what he does. Lies. Again, misrepresenting facts, misrepresenting things, because he's trying to get a conviction, not because he's trying to get justice. That's the thing here. Ken Kratz, I mean, seriously, how many lies have I pointed out coming out of that, out of this thing? I mean, how many so far? I mean, and are they small? Is it small to hide evidence? Is it small to do a press conference, you know, before a trial, and basically wipe out any chance of a impartial jury? I mean, these things, you don't do these things when you feel you've got a good case, when you think the case is strong, or when it's really the right guy. You do these things when you're trying to shoehorn somebody into a conviction, when you're just basically forcing them in there, you know, and that's my opinion. By motion on December 6th of 2006, the defendant notified the state of the existence of a blood vial believed to be the blood of Stephen Avery in the possession of the Manitowoc County Clerk of Courts. The following week, the state and the defense met in the Manitowoc County Courthouse and opened a styrofoam box and observed a purple-topped vial of blood, which had the name Stephen Avery handwritten on it. At the latest, the defense was aware of the existence of this vial of blood on July 20th, 2006. The state believes that the defense knew of the existence much earlier because the defendant himself possessed such knowledge. I don't know that Stephen would have been remembering that the clerk had some of his blood, but maybe he might have. But anyway, it's a reach to say. The state was not aware of the potential existence of this extrinsic evidence of third-party misconduct until the defense revealed the existence of the vial of blood in correspondence dated December 6th, 2006. So that is a clear admission right there from Ken Kratz that he had no knowledge of this vial prior to December 6th of 2006. Okay? It is clear as day, right? You're with me. Okay. Now, let's move to the proof of his lies. Okay, folks, we are looking at an email from Ken Kratz to good old helmet hair Sherry Culhane. the lab tech over at the Wisconsin lab. All right, notice that date up there at the top, folks. February 7th of 2006. About 10 months, 11 months before December 6th of 2006. Right? Okay, so well before. Correct. Okay. Look down around the middle of the page there. I'm sorry, at the bottom of the page, that bottom paragraph. Mark Wiegert is checking into the 1985 Manitowoc blood sample taken to make sure what it is. So you tested that sample back then. How bizarre is that? Were you also the analyst that got him out of prison in 2003? So Ken Kratz knows about this vial. He claimed no knowledge. He told the court, he told Judge Willis that the state had no knowledge of it until the defense told them about it. Oops, we did it again. It's over and over, people. It's over and over. Kratz lies like he's breathing. It's nothing. He does it constantly. I mean, I'm still going. I've got more. Just so you know. I mean, that's how ridiculous this is. Why is there so many misrepresentations of the facts? You have to ask yourself that question. If you're a guilter out there supporting this conviction, you have to ask yourself, why are all these misrepresentations happening? Why are they necessary? I mean, I don't know. Anyways, it's just my opinion. It's ridiculous amount, and it's getting worse with more and more that's coming out. Tom Fassbender's evidence storage solutions, no, sorry. That is absolute bogus crap. That is just, that stinks right now. Huge. And then there's this little gem. This was from a Facebook group full of people that believe that Stephen and or Brendan were guilty. And this was said in a conversation. Somebody was asking him about the day she was killed and stuff. And so he says, she was killed on 10/31 only if you believe Avery did it. Otherwise, it could have been as late as 11/9. The day the human remains were discovered in the burn pit, which it was actually on 11/8. But besides getting the date wrong, what is he trying to suggest here? What's in his mind right there? I can't help but wonder. The guy is so shady, and as I've already pointed out, tells so many lies and is so, deceptive. It's like, what was he hinting at there? And here's yet another humdinger by Kratz. This is was in a Twitter community on Twitter with a friend of mine and some people, and they were just discussing Brendan because they're all very strongly into Brendan and supporting of Brendan and stuff. And suddenly, Ken Kratz descends into the little group with this tweet, saying, this woman intentionally misrepresents the interview with Dassey, then attacks the straw man she creates. Nobody said she was shot to BD. Okay, that is some pretty bold hair splitting there, Ken. Pretty bold hair splitting. You do realize that in a question, if you say something that that you're asking about, for instance, if you're asking the question, who let the dog poop on the floor, you're basically telling somebody that the dog pooped on the floor because you're inquiring who or when or why the dog pooped on the floor, right? But the information is still being passed with the question. So that's a really bold freaking hair splitting there, Kratz. Unbelievable, really. So that's the kind of stuff we get from Kratz. He wants to talk about other people misrepresenting. I can laugh. All right, this is from Zeller's latest motion. Mr. Buting avers in his affidavit that neither the above-referenced CD nor Detective Veely's investigative report was turned over in discovery. The December 14, 2006 letter from Mr. Kratz likewise confirms by omission that neither document was disclosed to the defense in the batch of discovery. So, there you go. I wanted to wrap up with the most recent, thing that just makes you want to strangle Kratz and Fassbender. That's the hiding of that CD that of what was on the Dassey computer. that would have allowed Strang and Buting to raise Bobby Dassey to the level to meet Denny, which would have created considerable doubt for the conviction of Stephen Avery. It's significant. And you can see that they were clearly they were willfully doing this. Okay? Kratz clearly puts just a flyer into the discovery that basically kind of mentions the existence of those two things. And they don't go into anybody's official evidence locker because that would have created a paper trail that I believe Dean and Jerry would have seen. So it goes into Tom Fassbender's personal custody so that they don't notice it. And that's pretty obvious here. The whole and then everything else. I mean, we all know Kratz misrepresented this thing. He's been misrepresenting this thing from day one. So many things that he said have been proven false. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you have to look at the accumulation at some point and go, good grief. Why do they need to lie so much? You know, I mean, it just begs the question. It just does. You know, like I said, watch out for people like Nancy Grace. She thinks she knows what she's talking about, but I mean, I could really pick apart a lot of the things that she says in that podcast, which, as I said before, will be down below. But I mean, I could pick apart a lot of her facts right out of the investigation reports that she thinks, you know, that her so-called facts. But anyway, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see ya.